I said, I want to get an island that the things that are brought in and out are defined, that it's simple enough that I can grasp how the whole thing operates. And when I got to Alaska, I said, this is my island.
We were building a state, and it just inspired all kinds of people. And all kinds of people came here.
And I think that statehood sort of lifted us from the colonial status, because we had rights, we had things we could enforce, we could control our own destiny. So that was bringing together Alaskans that had never had a voice before. And that's what made it so remarkable.
George and Jean Rogers came to Alaska in 1945. They built a home, raised a family, and were very active community members in Juneau, where they lived. George's academic background and advanced degrees allowed him to work as an economist, professor, and researcher. During his long career, he held local public office, worked for the federal and territorial governments, and started an academic institute. He was one of those who helped pen the state constitution and was a pioneer of Alaska statehood.
I was born in San Francisco in the Potrero district. If you know San Francisco, you know what that is. In 1917, I went through the usual school system, which in those days was not the sort of thing we have. The Potrero district was a place where new Americans came in, Irish and Italian. And my mother was Australian, my father was of Cornish descent, so I spoke with an Australian accent, which they assumed was English, which gave me trouble on the playground. But I became an Italian, and I survived. The Irish bullies would move around in a group. The one thing about a bully is that he never stands alone. And they pick out someone like myself who was different than the others. And the whole thing was that they make a circle around and knock you down and kick you. Then if you fought back, then they can really clean up on you and say, well, he hit me first. Well, this time I landed down, my hand fell on the rock, and I stood up and I swung up. His name was Glenn Nolan. I hit him on the left temple, and head wounds bleed. And all of a sudden blood was spurting, and I dropped the rock, stood there. He started crying. Everybody was horrified. The playground wanted to grab me. Frog walked me into the school, and I had to stand in front of the class and say, this is a vicious person, stay away. Well, the next thing I knew, I was put in a speech correction class. And I came in, there were just Italian boys there. And I said, what are we doing here? He said, well, you talk funny too. So we became very good friends. And there's a long story I go into about how the head of the Italian boys, they had the poor young woman who was, the only lessons she had were for stutterers. So she went through this whole thing of having us sit at the desks and pull down the blinds. We said, slow speech is easy. And then she said, now imagine you're in some sort of situation very peaceful, and you're walking along into the woods, and it's all quiet. And then she said, now one of you tell what's happening. And the leader of the Italian boys said, I was walking along, the birds were singing, and I came to this river, and all of a sudden there was a rustling, and a tiger leapt out at me. And we all started laughing. She said, no, no. And she burst into tears. That was the last speech correction class I went to. But I had bonded with the Italians, so I could stand over with the Italian boys with my hands on my hips and say, okay, you Irishmen, come over here. We'll take care of you. So for that.